Welcome to the Bill Cartwright Show with Steve Cohen. Our special guest today, very, very special, former WNBA player, coach, author, Olympian, too many accolades to mention, Miss Lisa Willis. Lisa, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm always very curious about people, where they come from. Can you talk a little bit about where you grew up, talk about your parents, and talk about what kind of kid were you in high school?
Awesome. So I'm from Long Beach, California. I am the baby of five. So I have two brothers, two sisters. My dad, he was a basketball coach. He was a great athlete. He was a good athlete. He was a good athlete. And then he ended up being a basketball coach, really good coach in that area. And so that's where I got a lot of my IQ from. And then my mom's just a businesswoman. Both parents are service driven. My siblings are service driven. So I kind of come from, a service driven home. As a kid, I was a great kid. I was really a great kid. I'd like to believe that my mom would agree with that. My dad is no longer here with us, but I'd like to believe that my mom would agree with that. I just wanted to play basketball, work on my game, play basketball, and work on my game, catch a movie every now and then. Didn't ever get into trouble.
Well, you must have been an amazing basketball player. One of my teammates, James Hardy, is also from Long Beach, so we're familiar with that area. Because you ended up going to school at UCLA, and did I read this correctly? You committed your sophomore year.
That's pretty accurate.
That's amazing. So you had to be a pretty amazing player for them to take you your sophomore year. Talk about that process.
Yeah, I committed to UCLA when I was a sophomore. I committed to myself in the sixth grade. So I was at a Blue Chips camp that was taking place at UCLA. And afterwards, my dad and we were walking around campus and I was like, I'm going here. Like just point blank, I'm going here. And so that was just what it was. There was no real discussion about it. And I remember after the state championship game, we had just won the state championship game at my high school, Narbonne. Um, we had won a national championship game that year as well. And then I was a state player of the game. And I mean, state player of the year. And I remember after the game, they were interviewing me, like, where do you want to go to college? And I said, oh, I'm going to UCLA. And so like the coaches called me and they're just like, hey, we heard you committed. And I was like, well, yeah. They're like, you didn't want to tell us. So that was kind of how that story happened.
Wow, you are a great recruit. And can you talk about who was your coach then? And talk about some of your teammates as well at UCLA.
Yeah, so the coach at the time was Kathy Olivier. She had been there maybe a little over a decade at the time. Then she had some great assistant coaches that I still keep in touch with. One of them is Trisha Stafford Odom. She's over at North Carolina Central. And then Tia Jackson, she's at Duke right now. And it was just great mentorship. Oh, and I can't forget Pam Walker. She's like my fave. She's still at UCLA. And so it was just great mentorship from those three ladies as you're just trying to grow into your own as a teenager or early 20-year-old. My players, I was a part of this this group called Triple Threat. And so we know in basketball, you have the shooter. Triple threat is shooting, passing, and dribbling. So I was the shooter. The passer was Noelle Quinn. She currently coaches with the Seattle Storm. She played in the W. And then the ball handler was our point guard, Nikki Blue. She got drafted to the Mystics, the DC Mystics. And so now she's coaching at Arizona State. And we just had a good time. John Wooden, when he was alive, he would say to us, we have to take some of the mustard off the hot dog because we just were having a good time out there. And he's just like, keep it simple. And we're kind of like, we like mustard on our hot dog. So fun times.
Talk about one real great lesson that you learned while you were at UCLA.
My development was going to be up to me. Like you have the opportunity to get coaching and training and development from all kinds of situations, but no one is really going to take care of my development. Nobody is going to really push and advocate for my own personal growth like I can. And so UCLA was a time where, I had my own training program that I put myself in based on where I wanted to be when I left UCLA. And I just went full throttle with it. And that's kind of the same approach that I use now in life after sports. It's my development. I have to take control of it. I have to drive that train.
So you're about to leave UCLA. You had a great career and you're about to be drafted. What were you thinking?
Who, me?
You.
Like, no. That was what I was thinking. Who, me? like I didn't start thinking about playing in the W until going into my senior year. I just figured I was going to go to UCLA. I really wanted a UCLA degree. I was going to go to law school after that, become an attorney, then a family court judge. But the summer going into my senior year at UCLA, I was selected to try out for the USA team. I made the team, and I'm playing with, the top 12 players in my class in the country. And so we're commuting to, let's say, the gym, and they're just talking about who's getting drafted, what position, and they're going through the draft numbers, and they're like, Willis, you're going to go number 9 to so-and-so. And I literally was looking like, who, me? Like, I'm the only Willis here, And so up until that point, I never really thought about getting drafted. I just was thinking law school. So by the time the draft came, now I'm like really antsy, like, oh my gosh, it's going to happen. I got invited to the draft, and it was like, they wouldn't invite me if they're not going to draft me. So it was just exciting. And I was really, really excited for my dad because he actually wanted me to get drafted since forever.
So talk about that and talk about that draft night. And then talked about your first day at practice. What was that like for you?
Yeah. So first, the draft night, oddly enough, that was one of the loneliest nights of my life because my family, they flew out to the draft, but they left that same day at about 3:00. So it was just like they had to get back home. So it was just me and my agent, and it was my new agent. So I didn't know him all that well, but we're at dinner, and it's like I want to just be with my family, and I wasn't. So that was kind of a lonely night for me. But the first day of practice, I'm like eager beaver, like ready to go. Like I've been watching these players play for a little while. So I'm about to D them up. I'm about to do my thing. And I remember Mawadi Mabika. I was D'ing her up, and she didn't appreciate that. We'll just say that she didn't appreciate that. And so she couldn't get her shot off. So she gave me a nice little shoulder, took all the air out of my body, and then went up to shoot. And I was just like, okay, welcome. Thank you. Thank you. You just officially welcomed the rookie to the team. I appreciate that.
I should mention you got drafted by the Sparks. Now, who was the coach?
At the time, it was Jelly Bean, Kobe's dad.
Wow. Oh, tell me about that.
He is absolutely a player's coach. He was just like too cool for school. Like he understood our bodies. He knew like, okay, we needed to rest. Like, and that was interesting for me because I was always taught to go hard. Like we're always going hard. And he was just like, the playoffs are coming up. Make sure you get in your free throws. And I'm like, wait, what about practice? But I remember one story was, again, I'm eager beaver. And I said, hey, coach, like, what do you need from me? And like looking for some kind of guidance. And he just says, you're a pro, you know what to do. And that was like that was like the whole conversation. And I'm just like, wow. So one, you're right. Yes, I'm true. I am a pro. And two, that was so not helpful. Like I still don't know what you want from me. But it kind of helped with my mentality. I will say that, because do what I did to get there. That was the same thing that the GM was telling me, dance with the partner that brought you to the dance. And so he's like, you're a professional, you know what to do. So that's what we want you to do.
I'll talk about your schedule, because you guys not only play in the States, but you play over in Europe as well. So what was that schedule like?
Yeah, I mean, it was like we got 2 weeks off. Like out of 52 weeks in the year, we got 2 weeks off, and they weren't consecutive. Like, as soon as I remember with the Sparks, my rookie year, I headed over to Russia less than 10 days after our final game in the playoffs.
Amazing.
And it was just like, it's time to go. And remember, I didn't even think I was going to the WNBA, let alone overseas. And so now it's like, I'm like, wait, like I can't even recap my W season and really bask in that, because I have to worry about going to play in Russia, and I had the opportunity to play in Israel, and my parents didn't want me to go. There's a lot going on in Israel. So the very first place I played was Russia. And professionally, that was a great move, because I took less money to go to Russia, but the strength of the league allowed me to get paid more money everywhere else that I went. But socially, that was the bottom. So everywhere else that I went, it felt like I was just in Vegas, because it was just so tough to transition to Russia.
Hey, talk about your favorite team that you played America with. Was it the Sparks? Was it New York, or was it my hometown, Sacramento?
Wow. So I hate to do this off the bat, but I have to eliminate Sacramento, because that was just like a 10-day contract. Somebody was injured, so they didn't keep me. So not them. But it was two very, very, very different feelings. Like playing for the hometown, the LA Sparks, like that was great, because my family, my friends were there. Like if I didn't play that game, was like cool. Like, go eat with your family, go be with your friends, you're home. In New York, if I had a bad game or whatnot, it was just like, that's what I'm thinking about, because this is not home for me. But New York in the summertime is a great place to play. And we were young and we were exciting. And, New York, if you're good, the fans love you. And so I had some crazy, amazing fans in New York, and it made me fall in love with New York. But I will say the home team, the LA Sparks, has to be my favorite.
Talk about your favorite team that you played on when you were in Europe.
Oh, that's tough. I'd probably say I was in Turkey. Kayseri, Turkey, a small town, maybe it was like an hour flight away from Istanbul. And I chose that team because there was a player that my dad coached on that team. And so she was older than me. We never ever played against each other, but I always looked up to her because she was just so good. She was from Long Beach. Her name was Jackie Moore. And so when I went over to Turkey to play with her, we had like this Shaq and Kobe like dynamic dual relationship, and we were the underdogs, and we were beating people left and right, and it was just so much fun. So that was probably one of my favorite teams to play on overseas.
Well, Shaq and Kobe, and that you guys were fighting all the time?
No, just not that part. Just the the part where we dominated the game. Yeah.
And what did you learn as a basketball fan? What did you learn about that? Like, it's important to get along with your teammates. I know you've explored that a lot in your books too, and dealing with people and the psychology of it. So, what makes teams successful, and why do they fall apart in some of these places? You've been on a lot of teams.
Yeah, I think that coaching is huge. Like, it's hard to have a great relationship with your teammates when you feel like you're not being valued. And so that value is given from the coach, whether you play or you don't play. Like, I had a teammate where she was extremely valuable to me, and she never played in the game unless we were blowing somebody out by 30. And so that mutual respect for your teammate, that appreciation for what they do on the court, I think that's vital in having a championship team. Because I don't think you have to be best friends off of the court, but when you're on the court, it's like, okay, I value you. I know what you bring to the table. I appreciate that. And I'm going to show you as I distribute the ball to you, as I speak to you or provide you with insight or whatnot.
Did you find that when you played in international countries, you were closer with at least the American teammates because you had to rely on each other more than domestically?
Absolutely. We could build a stronger relationship, so I had to rely on the American players for everything, like for a laugh, to get me the ball, to have somebody to eat with afterwards, like to just reach my English word quota for the day. Like, you have to rely on them for so many things, because I've never been in this situation, but I could imagine if you don't get along with the other American, it's going to be really, really lonely out there.
Okay, so you are now done playing. Did you have an idea about what you were going to do?
Yeah, I always thought that I would go to law school. And the way that I ended my career, I just was almost a shell of myself. The day that I got my contract to play in Turkey again, that was hands down the sweetest contract that I ever received to that point. And I went to the gym, blew out my knee. And so just dealing with all of that emotionally, or I guess not dealing with that emotionally, is kind of what put me in just zombie mode and a shell of myself. And so I didn't want to go to law school, wasn't in the right headspace for that. I tried business school, did well, but I did not finish. And so, but what I did know is that I really enjoyed the player development aspect of basketball. Not coaching, but just the player development. And that goes back to just helping players feel valued, and at this level and at the next level. And so I took that business far, took it across the country, pretty successful in it, and ended up getting some coaching opportunities from that. But I never thought I would actually be a coach.
We'll talk about Westchester and who hired you.
Sweet. So Westchester was pretty awesome because I entered this program called the Assistant Coaches Program. It's a program that the NBA does for retired WNBA and G League players, and it's to get you geared up to coach professionally. And so from that program, I got the opportunity to interview with the Knicks, and I got hired by Craig Robinson, Michelle Obama's big brother. And so it was just awesome. It was really awesome because I had been running a player development company for about 10 years prior to that. And a lot of the things that I had been pouring into players and a lot of my philosophies, I was able to use it at the professional level with the Westchester Knicks and with the New York Knicks. And to see that it actually worked, that was so rewarding for me. my philosophies work at the highest levels. So that was pretty good. There's struggles with it, being the first and only woman. You kind of feel like you always have to prove yourself. But the Knicks organization, I will always be grateful for the opportunity, because when I came in, they showed me an extremely large amount of love and support.
Can you talk about the differences of working with guys and girls, if there's any?
Yeah, absolutely. When I work with women, they want to compete with me. Like, the first thing that like seems to come to mind is I'm better than you. And when they're young women, I'm like, you haven't even graduated from high school. Like, what are you talking about? You have not arrived yet, and so there's a little bit more resistance with women, and they're looking at the same resume that the guys are looking at. The guys, when they look at my resume, they're like, oh, she could teach me how to shoot. Oh, how did you do? And the guys are just like, pen and paper, like, teach me everything. And so when I got to the Knicks, everybody wanted to know, how did the guys receive you? Man, it's great for my self-esteem the way that they receive me. Like, they're like, coach, like, can you help me with my shot? And can you help me with this? How do you break down this? So just in the receptiveness, guys love me. I know with girls, I have to try to teach them, like, loosen up a little bit, like, have fun with it, and so you're starting to see that more. On the guy side, it's like, okay, like, let's scale it, let's reel it in real quick, let me teach you a jump stop. I know it's not flashy, but this is going to help your game. So it's two completely different approaches, but the game is the same, most definitely.
Did you do some work? Did I read here? I think it's called Best Start.
Yes.
Foster kids.
Yes. So once I retired, I took over my mom's nonprofit, and it was geared towards foster care children. And so I expanded the mission just to focus on foster care children in Los Angeles area, but also expanded it to just inner city and at-risk youth. And so I was able to get involved with some of the other organizations, and Best Start is a subsidiary of First Five California, where they're really focused on making sure that the first 5 years of a child's life is healthy. They have the right foods, they have the right nurturing, they have the right opportunities to grow properly, because that's something that's kind of lacking in some of our communities. And so I was able to sit on the board of that.
Now, where is that located?
That was in South Los Angeles.
In LA. Nice. Talk a little bit about something that I'm interested in. Talk about your book.
Sweet. So When the Buzzer Sounds, a guide to transition players from the court to life after hoops. That book is super duper near and dear to me, because there are so many things that athletes struggle with silently, because we just don't know how to talk to somebody about it. Like, if we're talking to somebody about approval, that conversation sounds a little bit different than a non-athlete talking about approval. So but it's the same approval issue. It's just, how do I tell somebody, like, I'm upset that the coach didn't mention me to the reporters? Like, somebody will just say, oh, brush it off. Like, it's all right. You balled. But it's like, it goes a little bit deeper, because if nobody thought Kobe Bryant was good, then Kobe Bryant wouldn't be the Black Mamba. So there's a certain level of approval that we actually need to get the stardom, and so it's just life issues that athletes deal with. They're people issues that athletes deal with. It's just a little bit different. And so I wanted to give athletes the opportunity to know first. You don't have to do this by yourself. It's written as a guide, so there's thought-provoking questions and keys in dealing with, your role versus your identity. Sometimes when you go to a new team and you're not in your desired role, that starts to impact you. And it's like, well, no, you're still a great person. Whether you're a doctor or a lawyer, or a janitor, you can still be a great father. And so I just was speaking about a lot of self-awareness and self-acceptance issues that people have just through the lens of an athlete.
No, I think that obviously, like, we write what we're trying to overcome, right? I think that, I worked with James Altucher, and he used to say, he wrote a book called Choose Yourself, or he wrote The Power of Saying No, for stuff that you were trying to overcome. And that's what made it a good book. And he said, like, nobody's going to buy a book on Brad Pitt on how to pick up women because he might have a hard time doing it. So I think you're obviously writing from your own experiences. And what was particularly hard for you about it? Like, I guess sports was always your identity, and it's hard for a lot of people. I know it's hard for Bill to leave after all those years.
Yeah, definitely writing from experience. And I will say that, when I let my sister read my book, when I thought I was done, I let my sister read my book, and she said, "This is a good book, but you need to go back and dig deeper." She was like, if people who don't know you would read this book and say, "Wow, this is good," but it's not great, and so I had to go back and talk about some stuff that I really struggled with. And that's why I say this book is, it can fall under self-help, but it's about social and emotional well-being. Like, when you think about the chapters, role versus identity, that's the very first chapter, because I need us to separate who we are as people versus who we are as a basketball player. Just off the cusp, we need to separate that. I needed to separate that, and then I talked about the next chapter, worth versus value. Who's giving you your sense of worth? And you need to understand, like, while you might be worth this much to your team, and that may be paid out through minutes on the court, your value is something that you have to depend on to keep yourself going. Then we talk about, acceptance. Like, and so there's all these issues that I was speaking firsthand, but I just know that I wasn't the only one struggling with it, and then, like, the latter part of the book, we talked about the step back. The step back was my signature move. And so it's like, now that we're transitioning away from, the game, how do you step back in life? So you're going full speed, you have your goal, you know where the bucket is, but there's something that comes in your way. Do you just pass the ball, or do you step back, reevaluate for a second, see if you have this shot, like, is this good enough? Do you need to change your course, or do you step back, hesitate, and then keep going to the basket? Because that actually is a good option for you. And so it's just a lot of sports talk, but it's broken down in a way that non-athletes can comprehend and just be great. Like, the whole idea is what we've done thus far as an athlete or as a non-athlete is good enough for the next door that we're about to walk.
Lisa, talk about what you're doing now, and talk about where do you want to be in 5 years?
Yeah, so right now I am at Nike. So I'm in Portland, Oregon, at the world headquarters, waiting for the world to open back up so that I can actually work on campus. But I'm an associate product line manager for men's basketball. And so, like, stuff like this, cut and sew, uniforms, that in retail, that's what I do at Nike, like of a product manager. And it's really fun job, challenging, super challenging. I've only been here almost 6 months, and I still feel like it's my first day. Super excited, but still trying to figure out what's going on. In 5 years, I hope to still be at Nike with a better idea of what's going on, and just able to really contribute to the way that basketball looks and feels, and even some of the stories that drive, sports. Nike is a huge storytelling company. They're able to invoke a lot of emotion and shed light on a lot of current issues. And so I would like to be able to contribute a little bit more in that area within Nike. On my personal business side, I am a professional speaker. I have some signature programs that fall under locker room leadership. And so it's my plan, and what I'm actually working on, what I do right now. In 5 years, hopefully it would have spread and everybody's just kicking my door down for me to come speak to their organization. But I just talk about leadership from a self-leader perspective, from a managerial perspective, team camaraderie, and really just helping organizations get high-performing athletes within their employees. So I really work on the locker room culture. That locker room culture of a championship team is literally what organizations want so that they can go out and perform. But we all know that by the time we see teams performing on the court or on the playing field, that's just them acting out or reiterating all the preparation that happened behind the scenes. And so it's my job to help these organizations with their locker room and getting that preparation behind the scenes in a great place so that they can perform high.
Awesome. I was really fortunate, blessed to have great coaches growing up. And as you know, right now, there's a real need for teachers of basketball. Would you consider going back, teaching, coaching basketball?
That would have to be a sweet, like with a lot of ease, sweet situation. Like, I consider myself a coach, not a basketball coach, and so I can coach basketball players. I've been successful in doing that, but I like coaching people. I just want people to value themselves and to know that they have what it takes. Maybe they could sharpen up some things, but I want to coach people to the next, to the next best thing in their life. Basketball, I'm always going to have a passion for it. So I definitely cannot say no, but that will have to be a sweet situation.
I don't know. That kind of got you excited. Stevie, I'm going to give you the last shot.
Yeah, no, I just was going to say it's really amazing. It seems like you help a lot of people, and I hope you're enjoying it as much as it seems like you're enjoying it, out there. So I know you're going to help a lot of people, and I'm excited to read your book.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, Lisa, thank you so much. Hopefully one day we'll get a chance to meet face to face. I'd really enjoy that conversation. Your journey's been exceptional, and you've got a great family, and I'm just looking forward to spending some time with you.
Awesome. Likewise.